Welcome to a bit of a Reddit review, my friends. I'm your host, Sneb, and today we're looking at this is why our game has population and community problems. NA, by the way. Kenneth Draxton. I think that this is Kenny. Kenny's pretty, I don't know, well known in the Guild Wars 2 community. If this is you, Kenny, hi, Kenny. I think I know what you're trying to say, but I disagree with you respectfully, and I'll explain why as we go through some of the comments, okay? Minimum AP requirement. Let's take me back to 2012. Daily dungeon runs like Path 1, 2k AP. So back in the day, they didn't have KP when there was dungeons. So the only way people could measure some kind of level of seniority or experience or veteran status, if you will, was to measure how many achievement points you had. This was obviously a terrible way to measure whether or not somebody was actually capable of running the speed that you wanted or had the experience that you really wanted, but it was something. And so people would typically demand that you had a certain level of achievement points. This is very weird nowadays because there's literally no reason to do this, right? Like achievement points mean so little. If you really wanted to try to measure someone's skill, you might ask them to like show a CM title or show actual kill proof from a raid. But what compounds this is that this is asking for Icebrood Saga 5, which are the 5 easiest instance content things in the game, basically. They're basically rollover, easy to do strike missions. They're not difficult at all. So what I think Kenny, if it is Kenny, what I think Kenny is trying to say here is that having any requirement for this is silly. Now, I agree with that. I agree that it's silly to have big requirements for really easy content. That's why when I make groups, I don't really have a lot of requirements. Oftentimes I'll say, know the fight, or have done the fight before, or be very confident in your class, or something like that. For Icebrood Saga, I typically have no requirements. But here's the thing. I very seldom put myself in the LFG anymore. And the reason is because if I did want to play a certain way, like let's say I wanted to be speedrunning Icebrood Saga 5. Let's say I wanted to go for a record. If I put that in the LFG, someone can screenshot it, put it on the Reddit, and ridicule me for whatever, right? Just because I want to play the game or experience the game in a very different way. I view this as extremely problematic. Why is it that I am not allowed to make a group the way that I want to make a group? I could say IBS 5 looking for big DPS, ping 1,000 potatoes. And I think that that should be completely fine. I don't think there should be any reason why people should be upset that I have a requirement for my group. Now, let's say that somebody DMs me and they say, I actually don't have 1,000 potatoes. I might just be like, oh, whatever, get in there. But the point is you're trying to make a cutoff so that you have some kind of common level of skill so that you can go in and experience the thing. The problem is there's no transparency tools. I don't know if somebody's ever done this before. I don't necessarily want to do non-consensual training. What if somebody joins this group and they've literally never done any encounter ever before? Now, the good person in you might say, hey, like, let's help that person. But what if the 9 other people in your group are all expecting that you're going to be speed running it or going for a record? Wouldn't that be like a little bit unfair to the other people in the group to be like, okay, we're going to drop our original plan. We're just going to train this new person. Sometimes people will do that, but I don't think people should be compelled to do that. I think that's unfair to the group. All right. So that kind of explains the context here. It's kind of silly to have any requirements, really. It's Icebrood Saga 5, but it's okay if people do have requirements. And this is why a lot of people have kind of retreated into Discord servers, is they don't want to have this conversation every time. Having this kind of conversation is really stressful. Okay. Just to be clear, when you state that this is why our game has problems, it's because people like you can't let people play how they want while simultaneously preaching that everyone should be allowed to play however they want, right? Right? Oops. That commander has literally zero impact on anyone outside their squad. You know what does? Constant whining posts from people who rather point fingers at the wrong problem than lead by example. Because if you did, you'd quickly realize that setting some boundaries saves a lot of headaches when you're looking for a clearing run. And no, this isn't gatekeeping. There isn't any version of this that prevents you from experiencing the content in question. What it is setting boundaries. How useful those are is a different topic. And while these might be a bit silly, they aren't unreasonable. 10k AP is nothing. You'll never earn AP faster than those first 10k. Not to mention that these tend to be soft requirements with plenty of room for negotiation. That it require an iota of socializing, which I know is a lot to ask in this day and age of MMOs. Luckily, that is also a filtering aspect of these requirements that work in Commander's favor most of the time. K, bye. Okay. That's basically what I said before. I don't think it really matters, right? If somebody has a group and you disagree with the requirements, then you can make your own group. Now, it's okay, I think, to criticize that making your own group is a bit more complicated than just make your own group, because you might need a commander tag or whatever, right? But it doesn't matter, right? Like that, you shouldn't be blaming the player for this. You should be saying, oh, well, these systems disadvantage some new players. We should advocate for better systems. But it's not gatekeeping. This person is right. There's nothing wrong with having your own requirements. The reason on NA, this is my belief, this is just my personal opinion. I'm speaking for myself mostly. The reason, oh, Links with the 5. Hey, thanks for the 5.
Mr. Slug Stream, boop. Thanks for being a wonderful internet presence.
Hey, I appreciate it. You've come in at the perfect time as we're talking about this Reddit post, Links. So, one of the craziest things is that people can't really make their own groups because they don't have the commander tag, but that doesn't necessitate that other people should just allow people to enter whatever group they want. On NA, my opinion is that I don't make a lot of groups in the LFG because if I do, I don't want to be ridiculed, right? I don't want people to go, oh, Sneb is asking for KP, or oh, Sneb. I have had people get upset at me for saying, hey, we're doing a meme run with all necromancers. One time a Mesmer joined and blasted me and said that I was unfair and unkind because I said, hey, just log on to any necromancer. I don't even care what your gear is and you're good. And they said that that was too much for them. So ever since those kind of things, I go, I don't even want to interact with these people, right? Like, it's so frustrating to do. I believe that these kind of posts only perpetuate this attitude of entitlement. And I know that that's not necessarily what some people might want to hear, but I think constantly belittling people that make requirements and make groups, belittling commanders is a bad idea because there aren't very many of them. Now, you can disagree with what this commander is doing. The best way to combat that is to make your own groups and empower newer players to also make their own groups. It's important. So, here we go. Here's some responses. I have 2 FLC. I'm just 90 gigabytes. Don't spend time doing stupid chores for AP like dailies. However, you are correct. Lead by example and just make your own group. I think KP is necessary because 0 KPers are just clown shows and leechers, but AP requirements is really weird. No, they're pretty accurate. Having not played, It came out 2 years ago. None of this community is. All this group is doing is saying their mentality outright. Joining a group that doesn't say this, learning is welcome, just means that you can't actually join before shouted out before dying to something you've never seen before. The problem isn't the listing. The problem is the majority of the community has the listings mentality and won't tell you outright. At least the listing is being honest. It's actually astonishing how people in Guild Wars feel like the worst MMO I've ever played when it comes to actual people in it. The game has a massive community issue and people are just too up their own asses to recognize it because I've been there 8 years. You should know better. Here's something that people won't want to hear. Have you noticed how a ton of content creators and commanders have just disappeared? I have. At least on NA, it feels like there are far fewer commanders and content creators and stuff like doing activities and events and tournaments and such in the game. The game is very much quieted down in the last year. And despite, I think Janthir Wilds was like a really cool expansion. I thought the maps were pretty fun and everything. But I think that when it comes to instance content, a lot of people have kind of left because they're not really getting the cadence of content they want. And this is what happens. This is what happens when people constantly torment the commanders or belittle the commanders or nitpick the commanders or essentially just make the commanders feel bad. They just stop commanding. So all these people that are essentially like freaking out because they want commanders to do X, Y, and Z. Just like, if you dislike the way that these commanders are doing something, you must fight back. You must. You have to. The only way to fight back is to make groups with no requirements. I've offered to buy people commander tags so they'll lead their own group, and they won't do it. They only want to join other people's groups that have more experience than them. This is problematic because that means that the people that have more experience, that the way they want to play is deemed as invalid. They're basically not allowed to go and play the way they want to play. So this means that they just won't play. They either just won't play or they will not make it public. Yeah, nobody's preventing you from making your own group. Person who's played in years and doesn't even know what any of the content is, just make your own group. Yes. Yes. It's okay to not know the content and just get in there. It's okay to put like new player group. It's okay to put never done this dungeon before, watching cinematics. It's okay. My big criticism is a lot of times when people have this person's opinion, it comes off as extremely entitled because what they're saying is they think that newer players should be entitled to play with players who are way above them in skill level. I don't think that, and I'm somebody who's done like 1,000 trainings. I've done tons of trainings. I help people all the time in my community, but I don't want to do that 24/7. Otherwise the game becomes a job. I am not interested in that. I want to have fun. And sometimes for me, having fun is doing a training with all new people. And sometimes having fun is speed running or low manning or doing meme runs or whatever. It's okay for me to play the way that I want to play too. Toxic positivity is why our game has community problems. Lack of competitive challenging endgame content is why our community has population problems. I think this is, you know, a very short way to express perhaps a complex problem, but yes. Yes. Change the system instead of complaining about it. Change what? Can't see your free for all training run there. Yeah, just... here we go. This is interesting. No, it isn't. Lol. Wow, refugee here. Can confirm that this turns people off you wouldn't believe, especially new and casual players. Creating artificial barriers for entry for people to participate in group content means... But this is untrue. This person doesn't get it. This person doesn't get it. Oh. This person doesn't get it. This isn't the artificial barrier. The artificial barrier is within the system itself, which is the commander tag. We're critiquing the wrong thing. We're pointing blame at the wrong thing. New players should have access to make squads. Also, hello, NicoCap in the chat. Welcome to Guild Wars 2. A lot of people just bother with doing group content in the first place, not bother with it rather, which is unbelievably bad for an MMO. Having your community is a critical part of keeping your MMO strong and healthy because the reality is that new and casual players are the lifeblood of MMO. Without them, your game shrivels and dies. Okay. All right. I'm not sure what this person means. Make your own group. Classic comfy frog response. Any MMO where you have to go out of your way to make specific groups or guilds for casual play isn't serious or dire shape. Casual play is and should always be the norm in general LFG, and if people want higher requirements for higher levels of play, then they can form their own guilds and parties. That's the only way of doing things that actually makes sense for the health of the game. This is so unbelievably bad. And for context, we're just talking about this, how people put stuff in the LFG with like, that's really easy content, but like crazy requirements. This person is very incorrect here, in my opinion. The thing is, when they say they can form their own guilds and parties, they do, but you don't want that. You don't want them to always go out of the LFG, because if everything is in private discords and stuff, guess what? I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it. In SG, I trim people a lot. If you have a bad attitude, if you don't have a growth mindset in my guild, then it's not a fit for you and we will eventually remove you from the community. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. That's the only way of doing things that actually makes sense for the health of the game. It's not. This is a systems problem. You're doing it in the LFG. LFG is and should always be for casual play. More hardcore players want to look for members to recruit for their guilds and groups, and they should do it elsewhere. Either there would be a separate channel for those people. Oh my gosh, this is so dumb. LFG should not always be for casual play. Wow. Let's see if I can find something else. No one is gatekeeping. It's his group and he has the right to set up for whatever he wants. I mean, there are several training and chill squads too. And of course, there's always the option to make one yourself. The point is that the greater community has a big mindset problem. I think the entire thread here is proof of that. I'm not crying that I can't get into this group or I can't make a group myself. It's literally the easiest group content in the game. It's about how it looks to new players engaging with the system. I mean, I would agree that it's probably not the best look, but you know what the worst look is? The worst look is when that's the only group in the LFG. And the reason that it's the only group in the LFG is because people like me don't want to make groups and put them in the LFG and have requirements because then people ridicule us. It's not fun. It is not fun to be ridiculed, right? It's like, look, people complained about me having an open invitation for everyone to join the Skane Gang Discord and join a progression rating group. I was advertising statics and people dogpiled me to the point where I don't do it anymore. I haven't done it for like a year. And then now people are saying, oh, nobody will let us in. Oh, these hardcore. This is just the silliest thing. Look, if you pick on the commanders and the people that are trying to get things going in the community, they will stop. Because guess what? This is a hobby. It's just for fun. So eventually people are going to get fed up with this and they're just not going to engage. So you have to be very careful with how you talk about these things. Is the requirement a little bit weird? Yeah, I would agree with that. But it doesn't matter because it's just whatever they want. The way that you get those groups to stop is if no one joins those groups. Or if there just are tons of other options. Public raid posts for years. Yeah, I mean, look, people can ask for whatever they want. It's crazy. People ask for insane things. Yeah, this is wild. I like this person's name, particular geese. Super requirements are just a symptom of a larger problem. And its refusal to adopt difficulty settings forces everyone together, causing unnecessary friction. I agree with this a lot. The problem is that if you put people with all different sort of mindsets or all different goals all in the same place, there's naturally going to be a bit of friction because those people probably shouldn't play together. Should a hardcore speedrunner and somebody who just barely logged in and hasn't played in 6 months and doesn't have a build or anything, should they be kind of forced to play together? I don't know, because they're going to have really conflicting ideals and ideas of what is fun and good. You should be able to enjoy the game in the way that you want to enjoy it. Why endgame PvE outside of open world is so niche. Raids and EOD strikes, I agree, but it's fast 5, not difficult, just the player base needlessly cringe. Yeah, I mean... Yeah... Guilds who desperately needs to cultivate a progression and carrying culture for higher end content like other games have. The ones that get me are the training raids that require party members to know all there is to know about the content before they're allowed to join a squad meant to teach players about the content. Yeah, I'm kind of curious about what they mean by this because for me, the way that I do trainings is I say, hey, you should have at least like skimmed the guide, right? I'm not going to read the wiki to you, because that doesn't make sense. However, while we're doing the fight, I will call everything out that's from the wiki. I'm just not going to sit there and read the wiki to you because you could have done that by yourself. I'll answer any questions or whatever, but I try to like condense the time so that training doesn't take forever. So it kind of depends what they mean. I think people where they're like, I'm not going to explain anything to you, but you should join and know everything. That's kind of crazy. Players that actually do the homework, no one should be getting kicked because they act as if they didn't, because of course they would. No one learns Kung Fu from a book, either by developing muscle memory and practicing. Well, I mean, this is partly true. You can learn about the concepts and then you apply them by developing that muscle memory. You need a multi-methods approach here. I dislike the reliance on trainers. It is absurd that you would say, oh, like we need somebody to train us on this. Trainers, or leaders rather, have a really big impact on success. But if we're fully reliant on that as a community, it is a massive problem. For many players, all they've read and all the videos they've watched go into the window once in the heat of the moment. All that sticks to the muscle and sequential memory they develop through trial and error. Yes, I mean, this is good. It's good that they've watched the things. They have some idea of what to expect, and then they can keep going back and compare notes. You got party members if you don't refill the population. If you don't refill the population, it's never going to change, though. Yeah. It's not going to change. The game's too old at this point. Yeah. This is crazy. Anyway, I just wanted to go through this. I guess in short, my opinion is, yeah, does it suck that people have requirements like this for super easy content? Maybe, but it's kind of their prerogative. Is it bad that this might be the only group in the LFG? Yes, but that is a symptom of a much bigger problem. The bigger problem is that a lot of the really good trainers and leaders and stuff, they just don't play as much anymore, or they play very privately in their own discords or communities. And the reason they do that is because of the comments in these kind of threads, right? They go crazy, right? Like people get really angry at people. I mean, I've kind of crawled into my shell a few times because people have gotten mad. They don't like the way that I do something, or they think that I'm being unfair in some way. And I'm an imperfect person. I just try to do whatever I can, but it's never going to be perfect. And it turns out that people don't like being publicly ridiculed. So that's my take on this. Hope you enjoyed. I'll talk to you next time.